Hello, girls! Welcome to another episode of Soar Girls Podcast. This is a place of conversation featuring stories of girls like you who have been influencing the world with the light of Jesus. Our vision is to raise a generation of girls who soar in Christ. And we believe our conversations will lift, lead, and launch you into your God destiny. So dive in. So girls, today we have with us Megan. She's a creator of Body Talk Basics. She offers courses about female body and hopes to pass on what she has learned about the female body to the next generation. Her vision is every woman finds this information empowering. So let's welcome Megan. All right. So, Megan, can we start with a quick introduction? Tell us what's your purpose and assignment in life?
Sure. My name is Megan, and I feel like my purpose and assignment in life is really to support girls and women to appreciate and talk about and learn how to better care for their amazing female bodies. And so that looks like a number of different things. I have a course for moms and daughters to take together all about puberty and body development. And on my Instagram, I kind of like to ask women questions and have them share about their experience. And then I'm also training to be a postpartum doula where I bring food or kind of support moms who've just had a baby. And so kind of feel like everything that I'm interested in some way touches on really supporting women and girls, especially in those big transitional moments in life, puberty or having a baby or things like that.
Wow. I think this is very creative. Like I always say in all my interviews, I love creative ways. I have not really heard, I don't think a lot of people speak about what you speak about on social media, and that's fantastic, I feel. And I hope the listeners enjoy it because this is going to be very different.
Yeah.
All right. So, while I think there are so many lies, especially we women or girls believe. As per experience, what's the biggest lies we believe about our bodies?
Yeah, there's a lot, but I think the main one, or one that a lot of these kind of individual fears come down to, is this lie that our bodies are weird or broken or not normal. I think, especially, I was this way, I'm not sure if you're this way, but especially growing up and going through puberty, as your body's changing in all of these ways, some of which you're expecting and some that you're not, there's this kind of fear of, do I look like I'm supposed to look? Like, am I developing in a way that's normal, or does this look weird? And so I think that's one of my big messages, at least in my course and kind of on my Instagram, and what I love to reaffirm when I talk with women too, is just that different is normal. That we so often have this kind of ideal image in our head of what we should look like, or even just be like. And in reality, it's really the differences that make life so interesting. And even just thinking about, if you got your friends together and you put your hands out and looked at each other's hands and fingers, you'd notice very quickly they all look a little different. They're all hands, and they all work just fine, but your nails might look a little different, or your fingers might be a little, longer or shorter. And we would all recognize that as totally normal and expected. But I think when it comes to other parts of our bodies, we have this sense that, maybe the way that we're different is weird or bad or broken. And, I think it's so important to just reaffirm that no, there are so many ways to look. And I think that's part of just kind of celebrating like the creativity of God, as well as an artist, that, he creates these beings that all look so different. Really, if you think of any art, like if an artist painted the same painting over and over again, we'd be like, oh, that's cool. If another one, it looks the same. That's not, what is there to celebrate about that? And so I think we find that too in our bodies. And the more that we lean into that, then we can celebrate our bodies and we can celebrate the bodies of other people too, because there isn't as much of this comparison, because we're not competing to be the same, and you can only really be who you are anyway. So the sooner in life we can really lean into that, I think the better.
Yeah, I think the analogy of fingers, I think that was fantastic. We got to accept that we're different, but we are normal. That's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that that's very inspirational. Talking about one more very, very important topic. I think it's in India, I especially say that this is like a topic that people don't really speak about. And all the women I know, all girls, women I know, face this issue, right? Some bigger or some way or the other, either it is physical, mental, whatever it is, and it's about period pain. Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, I think I remember from the time I first time got it, I was told it is normal to have a period pain, your back, your legs, your stomach, or anything, right? But I was reading through your Instagram, and there were some truths that you were telling, and you were breaking some lies. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was a big thing for me too when I first learned that. I think there's a lot of things about being a woman that we kind of take and even are told are just going to be painful. And you just have to kind of suck it up. And that's kind of part of being a woman. And I think there, yeah, that's, I think that's wrong in most ways. And yeah, so I think if we think about what a period is, so a period is just the release of the lining of blood and nutrients that your uterus built up to prepare for a potentially fertilized egg. And if an egg wasn't fertilized and didn't implant in that lining, then it can safely release it and let it go. And none of that is painful. Like there's no part of that that requires pain to happen. The release of the lining doesn't need pain.
Wow.
And so what's interesting is, so oftentimes, especially with, I think cramps is one thing that comes up for a lot of people when they think of period pain. And so really cramps are caused by too many of these things called prostaglandins. And so prostaglandins are kind of like hormones. They're not exactly hormones, but they're little messengers. And what I love about even taking something like prostaglandins is prostaglandins aren't bad. They have a purpose. Same like hormones. People always talk about hormones like they're bad, or like, say, oh, I'm so hormonal, or you're so hormonal. That's kind of a bad thing, but we're all hormonal. We all have hormones,
Yeah.
and hormones are really amazing and allow us to do a lot of the things that we want to do. But it's when things are out of balance. That's where we start feeling the pain. That's where we start feeling like something is off here. I don't like who I'm becoming when I, feel this way or before my period. And so prostaglandins are kind of similar. So when we have too many prostaglandins, that's when we feel the cramping as painful. So prostaglandins are supposed to help cramp or contract the uterus. So that it can help, release the lining. But that cramping, I mean, if you just like kind of squeeze your finger, like that's not, or you just, put your hand into a fist, that's not painful, but there's contracting there, right? But if someone like really put, their hand around your fist and like squeeze so tight, then we would be like, ow, that cramping is painful. But just the kind of squeezing of your hand isn't painful. So that's kind of similar. Like you might just feel a little, I kind of think about like feeling maybe a little full or something because your uterus is, full of that blood that it's releasing, but it should not be where you're like laying on the couch or where you're like, I can't go on a walk or those kinds of things. That's where your body is really saying, hey, I need your help. I need your support here. And that's why our body sends us messages, and pain is a powerful message, right? That gets our attention real fast, or it should. And so I think it's so powerful once you start realizing that period pain is a piece of communication from your body to you. I mean, we are our bodies too, but to, your brain, I guess, or your conscious part of you to say, hey, I need some more support here so that we can get this balance back.
Interesting. Wow. That's a lot of knowledge on female body. I think this is the first time I heard so extensively about why the pain and what happens, and it's not normal. I mean, yeah, so true. Like every time I me too. I mean, I'm just trying to set myself free as and when I have been going through your posts. But yeah, I mean, if you get a period, you actually wait for the pain, and then you're ready to start a period for the month.
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but you just saying that it doesn't require to be painful. I mean, there's no need of pain. Wow, that's kind of setting me free a little bit. Yeah, that's fantastic. Whoa, this
Yeah. Yeah. No, I felt that freedom too. I was like, what? No one told me that, earlier. It's, it is kind of sad. I think that's, again, it goes back to these kind of lies that
Mm,
kind of imprison us. And we start to accept those things. And I think I mean, for me, at least, being raised as a Christian, it was really easy to think like, oh, if, God cursed me with this female body, men have it so much easier. A
yeah.
period is a curse, all of these things. And once you realize, oh, actually the body is designed so wisely that, it shouldn't be this painful experience, that really helped even like spiritually for me to let go of those barriers that I put up between myself and God too, that, God designed this pain for me. And in fact, wanted me to feel this pain. And I don't think that is true.
Yeah, fantastic. Since you know so much about the female body, how did you start? What led you to start, researching about it and talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm always learning. There are so many people I look up to who know so much more than I do. And I do want to say too, like, I am not a doctor. I'm not a, women's health practitioner. I'm not a naturopath or really any of those things in the health field. And some people would say, oh, then why are you talking about it if you don't have this, certification, or didn't go to university for it or something? And I think that would be different if I, had a practice where people were coming to me and I was telling them, oh, take these herbs or do these things, but that's out of the scope of what I do.
Mm.
But I think that this is just stuff that all women should know. It's kind of like cooking. Like, you don't have to have gone to, chef school or something like that to just cook for your family and to know how to cook, healthy food for yourself and others. And so that's how I feel about the work that I do, is like learning about the menstrual cycle, learning about how to care for our bodies. That should be what all women are taught and feel confident in. But so for me, it was really in college. I was in my last year of college and preparing to get married at the end of college, and was starting to kind of look into birth control options because we were going to wait a little bit to have kids. And I was looking at, the pill and the IUD and some of these other hormonal contraceptives. And I was like, these are awful. They just would mess. I just was reading all these horror stories about how they messed with women's bodies and their hormones. And even like the pill, I knew so many people who'd gone on the pill for their acne or for their cramps or those kinds of things. And they were told, the pill is going to fix your hormones. And I think when I started researching actually what the pill does, it doesn't fix your hormones. It really turns off your body's production of your hormones, which is kind of a dangerous thing to do because there are a lot of benefits to having your own hormones running through your body. But of course, we're never really told that. It's like, oh, turn it off, whatever, that's fine. But really, when we lean into that design, it's like, well, why do we have this beautiful design of these different hormones in this cycle? And how do we listen to our bodies when they're expressing like, oh, you have acne or you have this pain? Again, those are messages that we can tune into. And so when I kind of realized that that's what was happening in the body, it's like, I don't want to turn off my menstrual cycle, or I don't want to have this little metal piece, inserted into my cervix, or these things that suddenly felt so violent. But I was like, what else do I do? That's all that people are talking about. And then I stumbled into this way that people were talking about it called fertility awareness, or fertility awareness method, which is the idea of learning when you are fertile, because that was another thing I had no idea. I thought you could get pregnant like any day of your cycle. And really there's a little bit of variance, but really only about a week of your whole menstrual cycle that it's even possible for you to get pregnant. And so fertility awareness method is all about learning your cycle signs to be able to assess, is this the window of time that I can get pregnant in? And so first, to do that, you have to learn what your menstrual cycle is like and what those signs are. And in doing that, I was learning about estrogen and progesterone and, even I think in college, if someone had said, can you describe what a period is, or even like, what is happening during a whole menstrual cycle, I would have probably looked at you kind of like,
Not sure.
there's some blood, I guess. I can't remember why, it's like helping us have a baby, but I don't think I really could have told you. And so that was a little bit shocking and humbling that, here I was going to graduate with a college degree. I'd been through high school and done really well. And I couldn't tell you a really basic fact about my female body and menstrual cycle. And so anyway, I just like started reading and reading. I was just so interested. And what I kept coming to is like, why was I not taught this? I had to learn pre-calculus in high school, and yet no one could take 3 days to teach, a course about understanding your fertility and your menstrual cycle. And so I kind of stored that away. There was just this kind of sense of like, I really wish I had learned this earlier. And I wish that, there was some way that I could help girls to learn this stuff earlier, but it wasn't really the time. I graduated from college and I got my master's in teaching, and I was a history and English teacher, teaching middle school. So that's like 11 to 14-year-olds. And did that for 3 years. And then when COVID hit, I had a lot more time suddenly at home to kind of think through things. And I was like, you know what, this is my passion. I love middle schoolers. I love teaching, but I really want to teach girls this information. I also want to teach them with their moms, because I think I'm so passionate about women talking, and not just learning. I think it's great when we have books and things like that. But my vision for this wasn't like, oh, give a girl a book and she can like read it under her covers in her room privately. I wanted it to be, how can we learn and talk about the female body in the community with other women? And so I thought, well, moms, I think, are such an important part of that. And also in talking with my own mom, it was pretty clear, like she had never been taught this stuff. And in conversations I've had with my grandma, she's like, I never knew any of this stuff. And so I thought, well, maybe this would be a great time for moms and daughters to be able to learn together and kind of be inspired by the female body and kind of together forge this new path for themselves and for, their daughters after. And so anyway, kind of in the COVID time, I just got to work writing this curriculum and then filmed these videos, and really just kind of shifted gears into teaching about the body. So that was kind of a long answer to your question, but that's how I got into it, and why I think like anyone can know this stuff. It's not, you don't have to go to college for it or whatever. There's obviously, I respect the people who have gone on and know even more details that I'm learning from, but yeah, I think all women can learn this.
And that's a very interesting journey, I think. And we look forward to, go through more of your content and learn more. I think it's fantastic work, Megan.
Thank
you. Yeah. Let's talk about self-hygiene, because I know, it's, again, no one talks about that. Even if they do, it's not spoken openly. Like you said, people don't sit, even women don't sit with each other and, want to talk about that. Even if they do, they face a lot of challenges. Yeah. So tell us about, period self-hygiene that a woman can take care of, if you could.
Sure. Yeah. And maybe I'll like expand it a little bit too, and just to self-hygiene in general, kind of all cycle long, I think. So I'll just kind of talk about like caring for your vulva and vagina. We'll go there. So first, I always think it's interesting to mention too, because this is something I don't think I was really conscious of growing up. So you have the vulva, which is really kind of like the whole area between your legs, except for the anus, your butthole. And then the vagina. So a lot of people just call that area the vagina, right? But it's not the vagina. The vaginal opening is one of the parts of the vulva. But then the vagina is the like the internal part that opens up then into your cervix and then your uterus. And so I like to differentiate that because there's kind of different ways that we care for ourselves. So one thing I think is really interesting is, hygiene is obviously really important. It's a way that we can care for ourselves and honor ourselves. But I think in a lot of ways, sometimes hygiene is taken too far and is kind of used to make us feel dirty about things that actually are normal. So there's a lot of companies, and I'm not sure what it's like in India, but at least in the States here, you know, you go to the store and in like the female hygiene section, there's all of these bottles that are for, you know, vaginal wash or vaginal douching, these kinds of things. And when you look at them, they are full of chemicals. And really how they're marketed is like, this will help you to feel clean and fresh and to not smell. There's all this kind of, you know, idea about, oh, you know, you should be worried about how you smell down there and then buy this product to not feel worried about that smell. And I mean, I think, you know, just body odor in general, like that can be something, again, that's like a message to us that, oh, maybe there's kind of an imbalance of bacteria, or maybe you're really stressed. Like we often smell more when we feel like really strong emotions. So it can be information. And, you know, I'm not saying like, I think everyone should have like really strong body odor or anything like that. And I think, you know, showering regularly and those kinds of things are important, but we don't have to smell like a cupcake or a flower, you know, like we're a human. We don't have to smell like those things. And when I think about, you know, the lotions I bought growing up, you know, I was like vanilla cupcake and stuff. I'm like, why was I so committed to smelling like a cupcake? I don't have to. And so I think a lot of companies will market to girls knowing that they're kind of self-conscious about, you know, how they smell, or, you know, if they're okay or if they're clean. And so I like to always reaffirm, like, you are not dirty, or like you are not gross if you just smell like a human and you don't smell like a flower. So the other thing is, I think these, a lot of soaps and these vaginal washes, they actually aren't just neutral, they're actually bad. They actually can harm you. So I'll talk about why that is. So the vagina is amazing. It's designed so intelligently, and it actually doesn't really need our help. It's pretty self-sufficient. She's an independent lady. The vagina, it cleans itself. It, you know, cares for itself really well, usually, unless you mess with her. And then you kind of throw things off. So the vagina is full of bacteria, and I don't know if you're like me, you know, for most of my life, I was like, oh, bacteria are bad. You know, we have to get rid of bacteria. And this kind of, you know, use hand sanitizer all the time, like get rid of bacteria. But really, I think we're learning, you know, more and more that actually it's more about a balance of bacteria. And in fact, in a lot of places of our body, there are certain kinds of bacteria that we really want to be present because they help to balance that specific area. So in the vagina, it's full of lactobacillus bacteria, which is kind of fun. It's actually the same kind of bacteria that you find in like fermented milk products, like yogurt. Like if you look at like the back of yogurt, it might say like lactobacillus bacteria. That's kind of the same strain of bacteria that the vagina is supposed to be full of. And what's powerful about that bacteria is it keeps things like yeast and other microorganisms that you don't want growing in the vagina. It keeps them out and it keeps them kind of contained. But when you add these vaginal washes, or you try to put soap in your vagina or something like that, or even like a lot of water, that's going to mess with the bacteria, the good bacteria that you want, and maybe, you know, kill them, you know, kill that bacteria off, or mess with that balance, so that it's inviting the yeast and other microorganisms that can lead to infections and things like that. So again, it's like the problem isn't that, oh, your vagina is dirty and you need to clean it with these products. The problem is that the products in messing with the vagina are going to lead to more problems. You know what I mean? So I think that's, again, such a beautiful design that really we can just let it be and not worry about it. And even with the vulva, I think, you know, I'm a big proponent of saying you do not need to use soap in that area of your body. You can just use warm water and kind of, you know, use the water to kind of clean between the folds of your labia and that kind of thing. But water is just fine. And the vagina doesn't even need water. Just let her be and she'll be good. So I think those are good things to think about with hygiene, that sometimes less is more. We don't actually need to be using all of these products on ourselves.
Wow. So, you know, you're saying that if we do use these products, there are more chances for us to get an infection because of the chemicals it has, and it messes with the bacteria. Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah. Like in India, we are starting to get, you know, a lot of products where you have the female hygiene section, like you said, and there are a lot of companies that are coming up with this vagina washes. And a lot of times, if you like, I personally have been going through in my head that, oh, should I buy it? Is it going to be
Right.
good for me? And I think you just targeted the problem. We have been told that, oh, you need to smell like a cupcake. I like that. I think that is the more than it being clean, we are stuck up with the fact that it should not smell. I think
Yes.
that's why, yeah. And, wow, I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. That's going to set a lot of girls free, a lot of them, especially the ones who are listening. I think I'm going to send this. I mean, there are a lot of my friends who are waiting for this interview to happen because everyone wants to know, about female hygiene. And especially in India, we don't really have sessions like these, even in school or anything like that. So anywhere and everywhere it comes from, we're trying to look at, okay, what should we do about our body types? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope it can be helpful.
Yeah. So, Megan, tell me how your work, how do you relate your work to your walk with Jesus?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think it kind of touches on what I had mentioned before, but I think to me, I've just felt so much freedom in my relationship with God when I have kind of relearned to see him as, like, oh, God is love. And, like Jesus, loves you, all of these kinds of things that, I heard and was like, yeah, okay. I believe that growing up, but I think it wasn't until I was a little bit older and I realized, oh, it actually had a lot of things that were kind of, it's like, oh, well, God loves me, but also why in the world did he make me a woman? It would have been so much nicer if he made me a man. Like, is he punishing me for something? I'm like, hold on, I need to really evaluate that. And so I think to me, just learning about our bodies can be so spiritually freeing. When you see God's love like written into the design of your body, and you can really kind of just marvel at how wisely God made us in our bodies. And I think there's a lot of this culture that, our bodies are bad, or that our bodies only lead us to sin, or that our bodies are temptations, all of these kinds of things. And I think we can use our bodies to do bad things. Obviously, we can see that in ourselves and all around us, but we can also use our bodies to connect more with God or connect more with each other. And so that's what I feel so passionate about. Is like, no, actually, it's not this idea that we need to escape our bodies and that our bodies are always holding us back from, true faith or from, our relationship with God, but that actually sometimes the deeper we go into our bodies and kind of within ourselves, the better we can understand God and his purpose for us, and at the very least his purpose for our bodies. So yeah, that's just a little bit to answer your question. But
yeah, wow. I think when I read this verse for the first time, that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, and that encourages me so much to take care of my body. Like if you're religious, like you'd be like, oh, your body's not important, the way you look is not important, but it's actually the opposite, where you need to take care of yourself, because it is where God dwells in, and that's fantastic, isn't it? I think what you do, it relates so much to the way we think, and the way especially women should think about, because we keep worrying about the way our bodies are, but we also have this thing, oh, are our bodies, like you rightly said, is it too much to do, are we falling into sin? But it's so wonderful. I think I'm kind of like you, where every time I look and try and understand my body, I can only see the wonderful works of God. Yeah, it's fantastic. So, why is basic female hygiene important? And can you tell us some tips, that we can take a look at, basic tips, and we can very easily overlook, and that could create an issue?
sure, yeah. I think one hygiene tip is like when you go to the bathroom, wiping, like if you're using toilet paper versus a bidet or something like that, wiping from front to back. I was taught growing up, I don't think I necessarily realized why, but in talking with other women, I realized it is actually not very common to know. But if you think about it, again, with that bacteria, you don't want to introduce bacteria, from your poop into your vagina. Like that's not going to be a bacteria that your vagina wants. And so I'm just thinking about making sure that when you're wiping, that you're starting at the vulva and then working backwards. That's gonna really help. Let's see what else. For period care, I meant to mention that too. I'm not sure what kinds of period products are the most popular, but even with any kind of disposable product, tampons, pads, it's really important, if you have access to them, to using products that are organic cotton. Cotton is a crop that's sprayed with pesticides a lot. And so you don't want to put pesticides, inside your vagina or near your vulva. So organic cotton, unbleached, again, that's a chemical. And this is another big one, is no fragrance. Like you don't want, I had like kind of a bathroom growing up where I had a little box of tampons. And once I was visiting my family recently, and I found that box of tampons still kind of in the back of the drawer, and I was looking at them, and it said like fresh scent or something. Like, oh no, that's what I was putting in myself all those years. And you look, what is fresh scent? It's all of these chemicals. And the word fragrance is really dangerous. It's a word that can legally be used to refer to, I think it's something like over 3,000 different chemicals. And it's kind of protected as a trade secret. So if we made some kind of concoction that smelled like, roses or something, but it was all these different chemicals, in order to stay protected and not let other people know our secret recipe for this rose scent, we can just say fragrance on our product. The problem is when you're a consumer and you just see fragrance or perfume listed as an ingredient, you have no idea where that fragrance is from or what chemical they use to produce that scent. Yeah. And so, even in candles or in, air fresheners or lotion, shampoo, moisturizer, all of these things you look at, that women are putting on their bodies or putting in their homes and surrounding themselves with, are all full of these chemicals. And a lot of these chemicals, they disrupt our hormones. So when they're absorbed into our bodies, whether that's through our vagina with period products, or whether that's through our skin and our makeup or skincare, they act like little hormones in our body. They pretend to be hormones, and they mess with our body's natural hormones. And so that's when you start getting really down the line, period pain and things like that. I think a lot of it can be traced back to the products that we're using, because we're adding all of this stuff that our body has to process and get rid of. I think we think of our skin as like a shield, but really it's like a sponge, all of our skin. So it's going to be pulling those things in. And so we have to be really careful with what we're putting on our bodies, especially or staying clean, because that can end up actually being a lot more for our body to process, and then leading to period pain or other issues with our hormones.
I think that's a great tip. I think I've been seeing a lot of organic, sanitary pad products in India as well. I think that's great. I think I need to switch to it, because I'm also kind of stuck off with the fact that it has to be with fragrance.
Right? You're like, why not? I'll smell better. You don't think it's a big deal.
But really, it doesn't make a difference. And I've always been worried about the plastic that is getting used in the regular sanitary napkin. So I think switching to organic, it's a better way to do it. Yeah. So, when you get a period pain, like you said, it's the cramping that happens. Do you have any hands-on tips on what can I do if that really happens?
Yeah. So, I guess there's kind of two approaches, and this could probably be an entire podcast, because it doesn't often come down to just like, oh, take this pill and it will all go away. But there's kind of two ways. So there's kind of in the moment help for the period pain. And then there's also the kind of, how do you prepare all cycle long leading up, because the menstrual cycle isn't a period. I still catch myself saying that sometimes, the menstrual cycle is the whole cycle with 4 different phases, and the period is just one of those phases. And so how do we prepare kind of for our period the whole cycle long? So there's kind of 2 ways to look at it. I think in the moment, heat, that's why I think you see so many women using like heating pads and that kind of thing. That's actually a really good thing for your body, because it's bringing circulation to that area. We really want to be able to let things flow out and not get kind of stagnant in our bodies. So, using heat, drinking warm drinks like, herbal teas, or even just like warm water, versus ice water or something like that. Ginger has been shown to be really effective at helping with cramps. So, sometimes like I'll make like a ginger tea and just, steep some ginger in some hot water, or you can even like press ginger and drink it like a shot. What else? Even simple, like just simple little things like wearing loose clothing, leading up to your period. I think just having things that aren't going to constrict and put extra pressure on your abdomen and your womb. So those are just a few to get started with, like if you actually had pain in that moment. Even things like raspberry leaf tea, or I know a lot of people who love eating raspberries. If you have, I don't know what fruits are easily accessible, and I'm sure there's other comparable ones, but that can be helpful. And then really there's also just the mindset of preparing for your period, so that your body kind of has the resources it needs by the time it gets to your period, rather than being in such a depleted state. And one big thing, like we already talked about, if you can, kind of making sure that your skincare, body care, that your home is, that you've reduced kind of the number of toxins that your body has to process. And then, so that's a big one. Another one is just honestly making sure that you are eating enough. I find that especially girls that are going through puberty, at least some of the girls that I would work, with and teach as a teacher, they would just be sitting there eating a big bag of chips, and I'd say, "Oh, is that all you brought for lunch?" "Oh, yeah, that's all I have for lunch." "Oh, what'd you have for breakfast?" I skipped breakfast." Like, oh my goodness, how is your body going to have what it needs to function? And I think I definitely didn't think about that as a young girl, that our menstrual cycle actually needs nutrients. These things don't just happen out of thin air, but we put into our bodies is, ideally helping our bodies to function smoothly. And so making sure that you're eating enough, that you're eating regularly enough, and not skipping meals or going a long time, especially for women. Our bodies are really designed for, an environment that is stable. And if you think about having a baby, that is a lot to ask of your body. You're giving your own nutrients, you're giving your body to the development of this little human. And so your body, so when you ovulate, when you release an egg, it can be held off. Like, your body is so smart. If you're in a time of stress, it will often push off ovulation so that, because it's knowing, hey, you're not in a good spot to have a child if you're in a famine, or if you've, been exercising so much and you don't have, any of the resources to nourish yourself. So then you can end up with a cycle that's, 80 days long. You're like, where is my period? It's not that your period's late. It's just that it took you so long to feel safe enough to ovulate. Because you'll always have a period about a couple weeks. It kind of depends, but about, 10 to 16 days after you ovulate. So that's a great thing about tracking your cycle, is you can know when your period's going to start, even if you ovulated really late because you were traveling or you were just so stressed that month. Anyway, so all that to say, nourishing ourselves, feeding ourselves regularly with meals that have, and snacks that have protein, carb, and fat, is just a way to really love our bodies and be like, you are safe, you are cared for, you can do what you need to do because you're in a safe environment. So those are kind of 2 things that I think can really make a big difference in our body, being able to have a period and not have it be this thing that knocks us down for 4 days.
Yeah, I think they are very helpful tips that should really help, especially for cramps. And taking care, eating before that you're going to get your periods. I think that's very important, especially girls. Because of weight and everything, you worried about your weight and you start skipping meals. I'm one of those people who, when I know I'm going to, get my period, I want a bag of chips next to me.
Right.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a great tip. Yeah. So, in one of your posts, you spoke about your menstrual cycle being a smoke detector. I was very interested in that. Yeah. Can you tell us?
Sure. Yeah. This is an analogy that Lisa Hendrickson Jack talks about in her book, The Fifth Vital Sign, which is a really great book if you're wanting to dive more into your cycle signs and, looking at your cervical fluid and your waking body temperature to kind of know where you are in your cycle. It's a really excellent book. And I thought it was a great analogy because, a smoke detector, you kind of forget about most of the time. And you only really remember that you have a smoke detector when something is going wrong. And when it's alerting you that there is a fire or a lot of smoke. And so I kind of talk about in my course, period pain is like a smoke detector going off. It's like, it's so loud, it's going to hurt your ears. But it would be weird to be like, oh, that stupid smoke detector, hurting my ears, as your kitchen is like on fire around you. If you're just standing there yelling at the smoke detector, being like, why was I given a smoke detector in my home? I'm so mad about this. Why don't we cover up the smoke detector? And that's such a stupid way to go about it, because your smoke detector is doing its job. It's letting you know that there's a problem. And so period pain or other pain that comes up in our menstrual cycle, whether even things like, really intense anger that suddenly overtakes you, or feeling really depressed before your period, all of those things are like a little smoke detector going off. And so I think it's so important to go, okay, thank you, smoke detector. I hear you. I'm, seeing that there's a fire somewhere. And so how can I try to figure out why there's a fire happening and what I can do to put out the fire, to get back to the actual issue. And I think that's where so many women are kind of deceived into thinking, oh, just go on the pill, or, take this medication. Not that I'm against, medication or things like that in the right time, but the danger of it is it's like putting, a bunch of towels over the smoke detector rather than putting water on the fire. It's not actually ever going to help you solve the issue. And that fire is just going to keep burning around you. And it might have started as like a little fire on your stove or in your kitchen, but pretty soon it's going to look for other things to burn, because it's like, you're not hearing me, you're not fixing the problem. And so then I think, if you have a lifetime of just stuffing down your period pain or stuffing down your pain or your emotions without ever stopping to say, okay, why am I having these things happen? The issues are just going to kind of keep multiplying. So not as like a scare tactic, but just to say, like, our bodies are so smart. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing in letting us know that there's a problem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic analogy. I think I'll remember that. Yeah, I do. All of us, that anger rage is something which is very common. Thinking of it now when you're saying that, that's like a smoke detector. Whoa.
Yeah, right?
My mindset's changing talking to you, Megan. I think I'm enjoying this conversation a lot personally.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, this stuff is so good to talk about, right? That you just like feel this kind of relief. And even every time I talk about it, it's good for me to talk, because I have to remind myself, of years of thinking in a different way. So it's always good to even just be reminded.
Yeah, that is definitely. Basic body care. All right, let's talk about basic body care. Is sleeping, exercising, taking care of your skin really important, or it's okay to just
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, for sure. They're really important. It's, those little habits that can kind of make or break things sometimes. I think sleep is a big one. I really struggled with sleep when I was growing up, and even went on this prescription medication for a little while in high school to help myself sleep. And looking back, I'm like, oh, my body, again, it was crying out for help. I needed to kind of change things in my life, and I didn't. But a few sleep tips, I think. So, melatonin, I don't know like how much, people talk about melatonin, but melatonin is like our it's kind of known as like a sleep hormone. It's like a hormone of darkness. It's what helps you get tired and then sleep, have restful sleep. And melatonin really only kicks in darkness. And so if you think about our modern world, we have our lights on right until we're about to go to sleep, and we're staring, or at least for myself, staring at a phone, scrolling to relax before bed, and not thinking that message to our body is like, it's, 1:00 in the afternoon, like we're not getting that signal that we would have from the sun of like, okay, we're going to wind down here. We're going to gradually get prepared for sleep. So a lot of us, with the lights on, turn off the light, and then you expect to just fall asleep right away. And your body's like, oh, is it nighttime? And so I think that's just one of those kind of sleep hygiene tips, is to kind of reduce the lights that you have on in the house. If you have a lamp, when you're just turning that on after dinner, and kind of getting your body to wind down. Screens especially, and they're like the brightest kind of light that we can look at and really trick our bodies into thinking that it's not time to wind down. And so, if you're able to, not looking at screens, opting for a book or something like that, or journaling, or coloring is kind of like a kid's thing, but that can be just so, doodling and drawing, like those kinds of habits, saving those for before bed can be really helpful. So that's one, is sleep. Exercise, as you mentioned, I think, getting your body moving is always good. It's a great mood booster. I struggle with exercise and finding things that I like to do. But I always like to make a point too, especially for girls who are like in sports at school. I think, at least in the States, kids get pushed so hard in their sports, they're at like 7 a.m. basketball practice before school starts at 8. A lot of them haven't eaten breakfast yet, or they're, drinking coffee or something. Mm-hmm. And so I always like to just say, especially to girls, if you are exercising, being really mindful that you are eating enough to not be burning through all of those nutrients and that energy in the exercise, and then not leaving anything left over for your other, body systems. So yeah, I see. I just know a lot of girls who were really into sports, and then they would lose their period, like they wouldn't have a period very often, which again goes back to that stress. Their body was like, you're not safe to ovulate or, have a baby, because you're burning so much of the precious nutrients that we would need. And so, yeah, I just see that in a lot of athletes, that they're so committed to the sport that they kind of forget that their bodies need energy to function as well. And then skin again is a way that our body, communicates with us. I've gone, I had a struggle with acne at a variety of points in my life where, it's like taken over my face and just feels so stressful. And so, concerning, honestly. And it's easy to think that it's only like a topical issue. Like, oh, if I could just find the right product, that would solve all my skin issues. And sometimes it can turn out to be that way, that maybe the product you're using is really messing with your skin. And so switching to another one can be good. And that's why I think it's important to look both internally and externally. I'm a big fan of like one ingredient skincare, using raw organic honey, a great cleanser. It helps, it's antibacterial, it's gentle on your face. It helps kind of protect that skin barrier. You can leave it on like a mask, as you're brushing your teeth or whatever. And it's just really great for the skin. So again, you don't have to look at a bunch of ingredients and be like, what is in this cleanser? It has fragrance and all this stuff. Honey can work really well. I love using jojoba oil as just a moisturizer. I'll make a little toner for myself with, a bag of green tea, and you steep that for a few minutes and then put that in a little spray bottle, and I use it throughout the week. Just things that are really simple that I can feel confident in because I know exactly what's in them. And it's fun. You can make it at home, have your girlfriends over, and, you can make your toner for the week, or you can, whatever it is. I'm infusing calendula flowers in jojoba oil right now. So that's also good for your skin. Something like that. You can just have fun with it. And it's doesn't have to be something that you have to buy. So that's, I think it's good to cover that externally, but also just internally. I mean, when my skin was so bad, it was like I was angry on my face. You know what I mean? It was almost like a manifestation of anger and stress. And when I looked at my life, that is exactly how I was feeling. I was so stressed out, and particularly this 1 year of teaching and with certain coworkers, it was just like a really, really hard situation. I felt like I couldn't say what I needed to say. And so it was like my skin was like trying to express that for me, of like, there's so much heat and anger inside. And so for me, a big part of that healing was actually getting to the root of it, which was I had to work through those emotions too. And I mean, for me, I ended up like leaving teaching and finding something that was more aligned with what I really felt like I needed to be speaking about. And so it brought some big changes in my life. But I think that's good to remember too, that it's not often just an external thing, that it can be a reminder of what's going on in the inside too.
Wow, I think that's so true, so important to. We just keep trying on different products, thinking things will work, but we gotta look in the internal as well and fix that. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Megan, for sharing your heart out here. I'm 100% sure every listener is going to be so blessed, and this I can't stop saying, but this conversation has been so helpful for me. Especially, I think in India, we all girls are going to be so blessed. Did you ever think that you'd be able to speak out, get a chance to speak to people in India?
I did not. I was so excited. I told myself, like, I'm going to be on a podcast in India. So yeah, I know that it's a blessing to me too.
Praise God. We just thank God for your life and for the work that you're doing. We pray that you continue to do so. And, tell us something about any new project you're working on. How do we, anyone who wants to follow you, listen to you, take a look at your, your articles or your content, what do we do to do that?
Yeah. So my main website where you can find my course for moms and daughters, and I do ship internationally. I'm thinking about maybe launching just a digital version as well, where you get digital workbooks and that kind of thing, if that was easier for people. So hopefully that's coming down the line. But so bodytalkbasics.com is my website. And then my Instagram is at bodytalkbasics. And it's geared a little bit more towards like adult women, or just kind of like even your older teens, with just some of the topics that end up coming up. It's not necessarily aimed at preteens. A lot of my content is kind of for moms to be like, okay, you can bring this up with your daughter, or, with your younger sister or something. And then I do have a Patreon. I don't know how common Patreon is over there, but it's just kind of a way to support artists and creators. And so I have that where you can kind of subscribe for the month, and I have like some resources there that I'll make, like have like a snack ideas guide, or these like body prompt cards that you can, bring to a ladies' night or something and talk about your body. And then for that, I'm actually working on a video on the history of tampons. I'm kind of wanting to do like the history of these different products that were kind of created for women that really kind of changed women's lives for better or for worse. Because I love history. And so I think that will be an interesting one. You kind of see, like we were talking about all those advertisers, like, oh, we can make money off of these things. And so I find that really interesting and helpful to look at. So I'm working on a video that will be on my Patreon. So those are kind of the main ways you can find me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming into our podcast. We really enjoyed this conversation, and we hope we are able to connect with you even more, Megan.
For sure. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right. Just before we go, do you want to say anything else for the podcast, or you're cool? Like, do you want to address the girls for anything? You can do that. I'll add it in the recording.
Okay. Let me think here. I think maybe I'd say one more thing. I think, like you're saying, I mean, it's so powerful when women can talk and share these things, and there's so much freedom in that. And so I think my encouragement for girls, or for all women, is just to continue to spend time with other women and to create circles of women where you're able to open up about these things. And I think sometimes we wonder, how do we do that? How do we start the conversation? Because it feels really intimidating. What I find is that, a lot of the silence around these issues isn't that women don't want to talk about it. They just don't know how. And so I think my hope for other women, or my encouragement or challenge, is just start talking about it. Decide to be that friend who's like, so let's talk about our periods for a second. What do you guys use for your, period products? Or, I read this thing and I thought it was, have you ever heard that before? I think just be the friend who starts asking your other friends about those things. And if it seems really clear that they really don't want to talk about it, then obviously you can be mindful of that. But I think, like I see all the time, women are like, da, 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 like they'll start opening up about it once they're asked, but you don't want to be like, hey, how are you? Good. I just got my period. Let me tell you all about my period and my period. Like we don't do that kind of thing. We're waiting for the question. And so be the questioner, bring it up and bring up your own experience too. I think leading with that, starting with your own, being open about your own life and even the things you're insecure about or whatever, is just a great way to start the conversation and to bond and to end up with these really kind of life-giving connections with other women.
Great. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for listening and hope you enjoyed this episode. If you find this inspiring and think someone needs to hear this today, do share this episode link with them. For sharing is caring. Also, don't forget to visit our website soargirls.com and check out our weekly blogs, free resources, and other exciting digital content. See you next time.